I'm Crystal. The sound of my mom's voice still rings in my ears. Your kid took the missing $10,000 from the safe. It was like a thunderclap in the quiet room. Forks stopped mid-air, and the delicious smell of roast chicken turned sickening in my throat. My sister, Stella, didn't even flinch. We saw him near it, she said flatly, her tone as cold as ice. My son, Ethan, stood there, his sneakers still dirty from playing in the backyard. His eyes were wide, like he was struggling to breathe. I didn't argue. Instead, I reached into my tote bag and took out a small silver USB. Then let's see who really did, I said quietly. Looking back, the night before this accusation, everything seemed normal on the surface. My parents' house smelled of freshly brewed coffee and lemon cleaner, a scent that pretended nothing bad could ever happen here. Mom was humming as she folded the napkins, and Dad was checking the grill. Stella was scrolling through her phone, feigning boredom. Her husband, Ryan, sat beside her with that smug smirk, as if he knew something no one else did. Ethan was in the backyard, drawing chalk stars on the patio. He's 11, a quiet boy who still asks for permission before opening the fridge. After my divorce, I moved into a small rental a few blocks away. I work as a freelance accountant, and the income is just enough to make ends meet. My parents started helping with groceries, tuition, and small bills. I never asked for it, but I didn't refuse either. However, this help came with unspoken strings, which Stella could pull whenever she wanted. The first time money disappeared, it was $100 from Mom's wallet. Mom tried to laugh it off, saying it was just a senior moment, but her eyes scanned the room a bit too long. The second time, $300 vanished from Dad's locked drawer. Dad said nothing, but he checked the lock twice the next day. By the third time, $500 was gone from Stella's purse. The silence in the house became thick and poisonous. Stella said she'd left her bag upstairs while changing the baby. Her eyes landed on me and then slid towards the window where Ethan's shoes were lined up. She didn't say it, but I knew what she was thinking. After that, Dad installed a heavy-duty fireproof safe in his office. It was bolted to the wall behind a shelf, and only he, Mom, Stella, and Ryan knew the keypad code. He told me over coffee, "I just want peace in this house again." I nodded, but I knew that building walls wouldn't bring peace. Money kept disappearing. At first, it was small amounts, but then it got bigger. One week, $2,000 was gone, and the next week, $10,000. There were no signs of forced entry, no footprints, just an overwhelming tension in the air. Mom started triple-checking her purse whenever Ethan walked by. Stella began whispering to Ryan at the dinner table. Dad kept a detailed record of every withdrawal and bill. I kept my mouth shut and watched the situation deteriorate. I noticed Ryan's strange behavior. He started avoiding eye contact with everyone except the safe. I saw how his gaze lingered on the office door a bit too long. I told Dad what I'd seen, and he simply said, "Then it's time." That afternoon, we hid a motion-activated camera inside a fake smoke detector, aimed right at the safe. Only Dad and I knew about it. Before leaving for work, he patted my shoulder and said quietly, "If it's who I think it is, I'll need proof, not guesses." I didn't expect that proof to come so soon, right before the whole family turned against Ethan. After Dad installed the camera, I hoped things would calm down, but they didn't. The tension just became more subtle. At dinner, conversations died halfway through. Mom stared at her plate more than she ate. Stella kept checking her phone as if she was following a script. Ryan just sat there, drinking water silently and twitchily, always close to the office. A week later, $2,000 went missing, and another week later, $10,000. There was nothing but panic and blame in the air. Mom called a family meeting. The word family had never sounded so cruel. We sat in the living room, the lights too bright and the silence deafening. Mom started softly, as she always did before making an accusation. "Someone's been taking money from the safe again." Then her eyes landed on Ethan. You were in there yesterday, weren't you? Ethan blinked, confused. Grandpa asked me to hand him his glasses. Stella cut in before I could speak. We saw him near it, she said, with the confidence of a prosecutor. The room seemed to tilt. For a moment, I couldn't hear anything. My pulse was pounding in my throat. Ethan looked at me, waiting for me to defend him. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Everyone in the room was already convinced. Ryan leaned back, crossed his arms, and let it happen. His silence was the confirmation they all needed. Ethan's hands shook, and his voice cracked when he said, "I didn't take anything." Something inside me broke. It was a quiet break, the kind that changes you. I wanted to scream, to fight back, but instead, I told Ethan, "Go get your sketchbook. Wait for me in the car." He obeyed without a sound. When the door closed behind him, the air in the room felt colder. Mom exhaled, as if she'd been holding her breath for a long time. "I'm sorry, Crystal, but it keeps happening. What else are we supposed to think?" I smiled, a small and bitter smile. "Maybe the problem isn't who you think it is." Stella scoffed. "You always twist things." Ryan finally spoke. "If you've got something to say, say it." "Oh, I will," I said. "Soon." That night, Dad knocked on my door and handed me the USB. "Footage is ready," he said. "It's all there." I stared at the small silver USB as if it weighed a ton. This was the proof everyone claimed to want, but I knew no one was really ready for it. The next day, Mom called again. Her voice was colder this time. "Your kid took the missing $10,000. That's when I stopped trying to explain and decided to show them. That Sunday felt off from the start. The air was still, as if the house was holding its breath for something terrible. Dad insisted I bring Ethan over for dinner to clear the air, but I knew clarity was not something our family was good at. We sat in the living room. The TV was playing a cooking show, but no one was watching. The baby monitor hummed on the table beside Mom's coffee cup. Dad was in his office, checking the safe again. Stella was scrolling through her phone, and Ryan was staring into space. Ethan sat beside me, swinging his leg quietly. Then Mom said it again, "Your kid took the missing $10,000 from the safe." The sound was like shattering glass. I didn't look at her at first. I just watched the color drain from Ethan's face. Stella added calmly, "We saw him near it." I knew she'd rehearsed that line. Ryan kept his eyes on the TV, as if he could ignore the truth. I didn't defend Ethan or beg for his innocence. My hands moved before my mind. I reached into my tote bag, took out the USB Dad had given me, and placed it on the coffee table. The click it made when it hit the wood was louder than anyone's voice. Mom frowned. "What's that?" "Footage," I said, my voice steady. "You wanted proof. Here it is." No one moved. "Play it," I told them. Dad appeared in the doorway, sensing the tension. He took the USB, went into the office, and closed the door behind him. 5 minutes later, he came back. "You should all see this," he said. We followed him into the office. The room smelled of dust and old carpet. The monitor glowed blue. The video played, grainy and quiet, with the timestamp blinking. The office door opened, and a figure stepped in. Stella gasped first. It was Ryan. He moved with the familiarity of someone who'd done it before. He walked straight to the safe, entered the code, and stuffed stacks of hundreds into a black duffel bag. Ethan's reflection flickered on the screen, his eyes wide and confused. Then Ryan's face came into full view. Dad paused the frame. No one spoke. Ryan's face turned white. He turned and walked out the front door without a word. The silence was louder than any scream. He left without his jacket, his car keys, and without defending himself. The front door slammed, and the echo lingered. Mom sat on the couch, covering her mouth and mumbling about checking on the baby. Stella just stood in front of the paused video, as if she could make it change by staring at it. Dad stayed in the office, silent, with one hand on the mouse. Ethan pressed against my arm. "Mom, was that really Uncle Ryan?" His voice was so small it broke my heart. "Yeah," I whispered. It was. That night, no one slept. The house felt empty, and I could hear the refrigerator humming, the wind through the vents, and every creak of the floorboards. It was as if the house itself was ashamed. The next morning, Ryan's car was gone from the driveway. Stella's face was hollow, her eyes swollen. She didn't look at me when I handed her a cup of coffee. "You didn't have to trap him like that," she said. I almost laughed. "Trap him? You think I made him steal?" She flinched, as if my words hurt more than the truth. "I didn't know," she said. I thought. Maybe Ethan because it was easier. I cut her off. "Easier than believing the man you sleep with could lie to all of us?" She didn't answer. When Dad came downstairs, he had printouts from the footage. Ryan's tattoo on his wrist, the money in his hands, and the open safe were all clear. He laid them out like evidence in a courtroom. "No police, not yet," he said. "But he's done. No more money, no more access." Mom whispered, "But he's family." Dad looked at her as if she was speaking a foreign language. So was Ethan. By noon, Stella's debit card stopped working. When she checked her account, it was empty. Ryan had cleaned it out before he left. She sank to the floor, holding her phone and whispering his name. That night, Stella came into my room, her eyes red and her voice flat. "Show me all of it." I opened the laptop and played every file in silence. She watched every second. Halfway through, she covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking. When it ended, she said, "He did it more than once. 3 times, that we know of," I told her. She stood up and left without another word. Dad started changing the locks that night. New bolts, new codes, and cameras on the porch. He called his lawyer the next morning. By evening, Ryan's name was removed from every account, document, and insurance policy. 2 days later, a letter arrived in the mail. There was no return address, just our last name on the front. Inside was a note in Ryan's messy handwriting. I tried. I really did. No apology, no explanation, just a motel receipt from Reno. Stella read it, folded it neatly, and said, "He's gone." For weeks, the house felt like a shell. Mom refused to talk about the video, pretending it never happened. Dad worked late, always on the phone. Ethan barely spoke. I'd catch him standing in the hallway, staring at the locked office door. One night, Dad sat at the table with a glass of whiskey and said quietly, "When the money first started disappearing, I thought it might be him." I didn't say anything, but I knew what he meant. The truth was in the silence between us. Stella moved back into her old room with the baby. She barely ate or talked. I thought grief had consumed her. Then one afternoon, she came to me and said, "I want to see the footage again." I asked why. "Because I need to hate him properly this time," she said. We watched it again. She didn't cry. When it ended, she said, "He used us all." A few days later, she went to the bank and filed for divorce. Life didn't go back to normal. It just changed. Ethan started seeing a therapist. Mom baked too much bread. Dad fixed everything in sight, as if fixing things could fix us. Then, one night, a car pulled into the driveway. Headlights cut across the curtains. Dad opened the door. Ryan stood there, thin and pale, with a duffel bag on his shoulder. His face was drawn, and his eyes were hollow. He didn't step inside. He just reached into his pocket, took out an envelope, and dropped it on the mat. Then he turned and walked away. Inside the envelope were casino chips, pawn slips, and a pawn ticket for Stella's wedding ring, the one she'd hidden after he left. Stella's knees gave way. That night, Dad had all the locks replaced before sunrise. 2 months later, we got a call from Reno. Ryan had overdosed in a motel room. There was no ID, no wallet, and no excuses. We buried him quietly. Stella said he'd stolen everything that mattered, but at least Ethan got the truth. She was right. That truth had cost us $10,000 and a family that could never be the same again. After the funeral, the house was quiet in a different way. No one mentioned Ryan again. Mom stopped setting an extra plate at dinner. Dad barely looked at the chair where Ryan used to sit. Even the baby seemed to sense the silence, sleeping longer and crying softer. One morning, Stella knocked on my door. Her hair was tied up, her eyes tired but steady. "Dad gave me a check," she said. $10,000. He said it's for Ethan for doubting him. She paused, swallowing hard. He said we all owe him more than that. I found Ethan outside, drawing bright chalk suns and rockets on the patio. When I handed him the check, he tilted his head. "Did we win something?" "Kind of," I said. "We just got back what was ours." That night, the family sat together for the first real dinner in months. The same roast chicken, the same table, but it felt lighter. Stella poured wine. Dad carved the meat. Mom even smiled. No one said Ryan's name, but his absence finally felt like peace. After dessert, Stella looked across the table. "I told Mom it was Ethan," she said quietly. "I didn't see anything. I just needed to believe it wasn't him." Ethan kept eating calmly. "I knew," he said. Stella's lip trembled. "I'm sorry." He nodded, as if forgiveness was easy at 11. As I stood at the sink, listening to their laughter, I knew life would never be the same, but it was becoming something steadier, smaller, and more honest. Spring came, and the trees outside my parents' house bloomed, as if they'd been waiting for us to notice. Sometimes, I still think about that night, the accusation, the silence, and the proof. Justice didn't roar, it whispered, one frame at a time, until no one could deny it. If you've ever been blamed for something you didn't do, tell me in the comments. You're not alone.